Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
The latest pushback against critical race theory. Pennsylvania lawmakers are introducing a new bill to ban schools from teaching this controversial concept. The bill's author tells NTD what he finds problematic with critical race theory. NTD's Allison Lee has that story.
Pennsylvania State Representative Russ Diamond introduced a bill on June 1st that would ban public schools and local governments from teaching certain concepts that form the basis of critical race theory. They include ideas like an individual should receive favorable treatment due to the individual's race or sex, and an individual by virtue of race or sex is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously.
Just a few weeks ago, the Pennsylvania voters went out and stated with a constitutional amendment that we should not abridge anyone's rights simply due to their race or ethnicity. I believe that our children should be taught that all Americans are equal. We should celebrate what we used to call the great melting pot.
Diamond points out that critical race theory parallels Marxist ideology because of the way it divides people and treats people as part of the collective rather than as individuals.
Dividing and conquering our children by making them super hyper aware of their race and how that makes them different from others, rather than making them feel like we're all in this together and we're all equal. I just think that's the wrong direction to go.
The lawmaker believes in teaching students about diversity, but says we should not separate people based on race and ethnicity.
At least one university professor in Pennsylvania admitting openly that this is a Marxist ideology. And quite frankly, America is not a Marxist country, so we don't need to teach Marxist ideals to our children. And quite frankly,
the bill has 15 co-sponsors, and the Pennsylvania House Education Committee will likely be considering it soon. And it's not just lawmakers in Pennsylvania that are pushing back against critical race theory. On Thursday, Georgia's State Board of Education passed a resolution saying students should not be taught critical race theory in schools. The resolution doesn't impose any bans, but may lead to binding rules in the future. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Masks are already a part of most people's lives, especially in New York City, where many have been following the face covering mandates to the letter. But now much of the younger generation can start heading to class mask-free. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the story.
Ever since public schools reopened here in New York City, students had to wear masks inside of the classrooms. Now, after months, New York State's health commissioner has announced that mask usage might still be recommended, but for K through 12 students, it is no longer required. And that doesn't only apply to the students, but also to summer camps, which are often held on the grounds of these exact schools. The rule is going to apply to all students and teachers, regardless of their vaccination status. But those who are not vaccinated are encouraged to wear masks indoors and outdoors. In June, the school year ends and camp season starts. And since students and campers are in the same age group, the state has decided to apply the same rules for schools and camps. Individual schools can still implement stricter measures if they wish. They have already decided on a date on which the new rule will take place, and that is June 7th, so in a few days already. I'm Arian Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
One 2-year-old girl has become the youngest member of the American Mensa with an IQ of 146. NTD's Sapphire Corder tells us more about this gifted child.
Some 2-year-olds have never seen a periodic table, let alone memorized it. But Cash Quest has not only committed it to memory, but also words, numbers, and continents by shape.
Antarctica was this one.
The toddler was just accepted into Mensa, which only accepts people who have an IQ in the top 2%. Quest's IQ, 146. The average IQ in the U.S., 98.
What are some of the unique challenges of raising a genius?
We do have to explain a lot more to her. So, for example, we can't just do the normal because I said so. In the long run, when something happens, she'll eventually say, it doesn't work like that because I'm Cash.
Her mother started her own preschool where she teaches Cash and other kids. How much of the brilliant brains comes from the mom's dedication?
What we expose them to, how we expose them to it, has a large factor in terms of how they gravitate towards learning.
Okay, let's do these.
Quest may have an adult-like memory, but she has the spirit of a toddler.
How old are you?
3.
You're gonna be 3, right? When is your birthday?
In June.
In June. And what kind of cake do you want?
Strawberry cake or watermelon?
Strawberry cake with watermelon?
Yeah.
She's also requesting a slide. Sapphire Quarter, NTD News.
American athlete and Olympic gold medalist Brianna McNeal has been banned for 5 years for an anti-doping rule violation. McNeal had been charged and provisionally suspended for tampering within the results management process in January. She was sanctioned by a disciplinary tribunal as it was her second violation of anti-doping rules. The 29-year-old won gold at the 2016 Rio Olympics and was world champion in 2013. She denied testing positive for any banned substance. McNeal has appealed against the decision. The case is set to be heard before this year's Tokyo Olympics, but McNeal was granted provisional relief so she can compete until the end of the U.S. Olympic trials on June 27th. A rare manuscript containing Isaac Newton's handwritten notes is up for auction. It's on his seminal work and is expected to sell for over $1 million. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Legend has it that a falling apple inspired Isaac Newton to formulate his groundbreaking theory of gravity. Whether or not the true story has been embellished, there's no doubt that the British mathematician revolutionized the world of science. Now a little piece of his work is going up for auction at Christie's in London. This manuscript contains his handwritten notes on his most important publication, the Principia. The first edition was published in 1687 and set out theories for how the universe works, including the laws of motion, universal gravitation, and planetary motion.
This is an autographed manuscript, that's a manuscript in the hand of Isaac Newton, talking about his greatest work, the Principia. This is the work in which he reinvented our understanding of the universe. He's working here on a second edition of the Principia, revising, improving, expanding what he'd said in the first edition.
This unpublished paper consists of Newton's revisions and corrections and was an expected second edition of the work. The manuscript shows a return to form after a difficult period in his life.
He had a complex personality, and the year before this, in 1693, we know that he had a complete nervous breakdown. He suffered from bouts of paranoia, he couldn't sleep. In 1694, when he was embarking on this, he was once again fizzing with the energy of one of the greatest minds the world has ever seen.
Newton achieved great fame in his lifetime. He was knighted by Queen Anne, served as Master of the Royal Mint, and was appointed President of the Royal Society.
I think Newton's Principia changes the way people look at the universe, and there's nothing quite like it until Einstein's work into the 20th century.
Despite attempts to refine the Principia, it wasn't until 1713 that a second edition was released. Christie's says documents like this rarely come to market. Isaac Newton's Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica will appear in the exceptional sale, part of Christie's Classic Week in London, on July 8th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Navigating a world of economic madness, you need to have the right guide. What do today's decisions mean for your tomorrow? We ask why. What's the alternative? Uncover the deeper reasons and the hidden influences, and highlight the real opportunities for profit. At NTD Business, we connect the dots for you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.